Hello everyone, my name is María López Rubio. I am a full-time research and teaching fellow of the Spanish Ministry of Education in the Department of English and German Studies at Universidad de Valencia. It is a pleasure for me to be here today as a speaker and attendant at the 9th International Conference Media for All that is held online and organized by Transmedia Catalonia on the 27th, 28th and 29th January 2021. This video is a Creative Commons license and the author's email address is maria2.lopez@uv.es. Today I will be talking about making television accessible. In order to do so, I will make a professional approach to the accessibility practices of subtitling for the deaf and the hard of hearing and audio description for the blind and the visually impaired. This research was supported by an FPU grant from the Spanish Ministry of Education. I thank you all in advance for your kind attention and I hope you can find this presentation interesting. This presentation aims to provide a professional approach to the challenges and the techniques used for subtitling for the deaf and the hard of hearing, and also for audio describing for the blind and the visually impaired at the Valencian TV. I will describe from a personal experience how professionals work in order to make accessible the programming grid of the new Valencian TV station, Apple Media. We're currently living in a globalized and multifaceted society in which audiovisual translation and also media accessibility play a very important role when it comes to guaranteeing information exchange all over the world. Due to social and cultural diversity, there are groups of people with sensory impairments who depend on accessibility services so as to understand and enjoy audiovisual works without coming up against barriers. Nowadays, there is a growing awareness of the need to promote social inclusion, and authorities are setting specific requirements for platforms such as the TV, the cinema, and the internet. In order to achieve so, TV stations are required, for instance, to provide a certain percentage of accessible content, especially regarding the two main accessibility modes, being audio description for the blind and the visually impaired, and also subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing, which we will be covering in this presentation. First of all, I will explain how the accessibility staff works and the general techniques used by them in order to make the TV content accessible. In the Valencian TV station Apple Media, the accessibility team is made up by 6 professionals in charge of audio description and live and pre-recorded SD aids. In order to carry out these tasks, workers do shifts. For 1 week, 2 people carry out 80 tasks in a soundproof room aimed at writing, reading out and revising audio described scripts. When audio describing, it's important to try to be objective. That is, not describing things from a personal perspective. In other words, as stated by Snyder, 2007, what you see is what you say. For example, instead of saying, she looks happy, we'd rather give the following description: she is smiling. Or instead of saying, he's poor, we would say, he is wearing all dirty clothes, for example. On the other hand, the other 4 professionals do shifts from the morning until the evening so as to cover all programs that require live SD aids. Live SD aids practices take place in the subtitling room, in which there are 2 computers with access to a license of finger text live subtitling editor by Anglo Technique. It's important to note here that the technique used for carrying out live SD aids is typing. Respeaking cannot be used in this case because the software does not recognize Valencian language. When carrying out live SD aid, the main strategy used by professionals is paraphrasing, retaining information, and making it shorter so as to provide the necessary tools and keys for the main recipients to understand and enjoy the most of the message. Revision is fundamental for all practices and for being able to do previous research on audiovisual products and thus help professionals carry out a better intersemiotic translation. The guideline used is Llibre d'Estil de la Corporació Valenciana de Mitjans de Comunicació. One of the most important restrictions professionals have to struggle with is time. Despite the fact that time constraints have a significant impact on the process of carrying out SD8 or audio description, when carrying out these tasks, the main purpose is to overcome all the possible restrictions while retaining the essence of the audiovisual work and ensuring product quality. In this sense, it is very important to refer to the central notion of relevance theory, which was developed by Spervet and Wilson in 1986. According to this notion, priorities required in terms of these techniques ought to be ordered in relation to their degree of relevance so as to achieve the purpose or scopus of translation tasks. It is not always possible to fulfill all the requirements of both techniques due to the many restrictions they pose, especially audio description, as stated by Martinez Sierra, 2010-90. But it is translators' task to minimize the loss and thus be as faithful to the source text as possible. As for the use of ICT tools, it must be said that no direct internet connection is provided for the main PCs we work with. That is, the ones used for carrying out LiveSDH. The reason for this is to avoid news from being prematurely released. It is therefore not possible for professionals to look for a particular piece of information when they are working on the news. If this need does arise, it is necessary for audiovisual translators to stop working on their projects and use a different computer in order to look for this information, or sometimes maybe asking a colleague to do the research instead of themselves in case they are carrying out LiveSDH at that moment. As LiveSDH practice requires professionals to be focused on speakers' discourse, our strategy is to use a different computer to look for this specific piece of information, but this sometimes entails additional problems such as losing time and concentration. Being able to look for information is fundamental to doing research beforehand, for solving linguistic doubts that may come up during the practice, as well as for revising the text before it is sent. So another challenge concerning ICT tools is the software used by professionals in order to get accessibility practices done. The software for creating subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing is Fingertext Offline Subtitling Editor, which is developed by Anglatechnic. Owing to the license for this program having been bought by the outsourced company, it is only available on two computers, the one used for uploading final documents and the one used for creating audio description. So it is not possible for professionals to have all the required programs subtitled in time by only relying on this software. For this reason, the professional strategy is to utilize additional open source software to create subtitles and sound effects, thanks to which the 6 members of the accessibility staff are allowed to work at the same time without having to postpone any of their tasks because another colleague is, for example, working on the computer that has that license. A proposal for improvement is for professionals to be provided with their own computer, or at least to have one computer with the license for this software and another commonly used finger text applications for every 2 professionals, and a fast internet connection as well, so that accessibility tasks can be accomplished in the best conditions possible. In the subtitling team, we take turns of 30 minutes maximum, and we should rest for the next 20 minutes at least. But this is hardly ever the case, as we need to be covering other aspects, such as, for example, communicating technical issues, or keeping on making other content accessible, or sometimes even revising colleagues' work, for instance. Workflow is therefore considerably high, especially during vacation time, when there are fewer professionals to carry out a higher amount of work. The common strategy here when workflow is so high is to do shifts and take turns. There is more than one professional in the room, so that a person that is not typing at that moment can be in charge of other tasks. While a person is subtitling live, others are carrying out non-live subtitling revision or even audio description tasks, for instance. At other times, colleagues are in charge of looking for information or, for instance, doing terminology research for live subtitling programs to come. Professionals that are not working on live subtitling in a particular moment may ask for any documents or program planning in advance so as to write useful information down, such as names and dates. And due to the fact that managing all this takes collaboration, a possible improvement proposal would be to increase the number of professionals working in accessibility services so that they can carry out live subtitling in a more effective way, making sure necessary rests are taken between sessions. Another possible solution as well for this problem would be for external companies hiring accessibility professionals to take a more visible and proactive part in the process, taking responsibility for organizational tasks such as providing additional workers whenever an employee is not working in the team anymore, or for instance during vacation time. And last but not least, it needs to be emphasized that the main tool for quality control are colleagues' revisions. And perhaps surprisingly at this point in time, the subtitling team does not actually have direct access to users' feedback, finding out consumers' needs and requests by way of an internal service of journalists and web managers, as well as through the social media. Additionally, some professionals in the team are currently carrying out their university research, as well as working on this service. So, thanks to them being linked to the academia while working in a professional sphere, they can have updated information about accessibility standards and techniques so as to provide services matching most users' expectations. On the other hand, professionals in charge of accessibility services of SDAs and audio description in Apple Media rely on Corporació Valenciana de Mitjans de Comunicació guideline standards on the previous academic and professional experience, as well as on linguist advice to provide this service in the best possible conditions. As a proposal for improvement, access to tools providing users feedback and reception studies could be useful sources for professionals, thus enabling them to quickly and easily ascertain which aspects are helpful to consumers and which are the preferences and real needs. Another important resource would be to arrange meetings every few weeks with a representative group of potential users so that feedback can be given on the product. In order to summarize the main points of my presentation, I should highlight the fact that media accessibility is fundamental for guaranteeing the access to information for consumers in equal conditions. It is also relevant to note that more investment in accessibility is necessary so as to cover all users' needs and demands, and thus guaranteeing their rights. Nevertheless, in the same way that it is imperative to highlight the importance of growing the amount of accessible content, it's also relevant to provide professionals with the necessary means and working conditions so that their efforts can lead to quality and successful results which will ultimately cover consumers' needs. Only then will it be possible for our society to make a fully effective step forward towards guaranteeing users' rights and thus promoting real social inclusion. And now, having finished my online presentation, I would like to thank you all for your kind attention, and I will be glad to receive any questions or comments that you deem appropriate. Thank you so much to all of you, and I hope to see you in person as soon as the situation gets better. Goodbye.